Okay. I'll pick up the mic in a minute here. But good evening, if anybody is there. Is this frequency in use? That is by anyone other than the repeater itself. You just got to get the last word in there, don't you? Anyway, this is Neil, W2NDG from Highland, New York, on the OMARC 146805 repeater. First, let's check to see if there is any emergency or priority traffic out there. Please come now. All right, nothing heard. Welcome to the November 14th edition of the Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. This is net number 30. Those of you looking in the YouTube list will notice that we skipped 29. I wasn't feeling well last weekend, and I really thank Jim for stepping in and taking over. And you know what? A lot of people think it was a strange choice of subjects. Ended up being an interesting discussion because I think they always are. We can pick almost anything, and a lot of people don't realize how deep some of these topics really go. So, having said that, I don't really have a topic for tonight. I have a general direction I can go in and talk about dealing with the day's events. But to tell you the truth, I have had a very busy weekend, and I am really tired. I'm so glad we moved these nets from 9 to 8, though. Anyway, but if anybody has a specific thing they want to talk about tonight, and once again, it's anything really science and technology related. It can be ham radio, even though we usually reserve that for Dave's Thursday nets, as long as we don't step on his topics. That's fine. So let me just see if my partner in crime is out there first. Jim, K2BHM, are you around tonight? All right. Well, Sunday night is Jim's like family dinner night there. He might be late getting back from dinner, which is fine. But let me talk about what I did today and a couple of things I've been working on here. So I went to the Limemark Hamfest today in Levittown, Long Island, and I'm dropping things. I'm a professional thing dropper. Ooh. Anyway, I collect things. Sometimes things that people give me, sometimes things that I pick up at yard sales, garage sales, other hamfests, things like that. And some of it I keep, I refurbish, I use. Most of it, I fix things up, I play with them, I learn what they are, take them apart, put them back together, whatever it is. It's a way of learning, and frequently end up just selling the stuff. So I usually have a few crates worth of stuff I bring down to these hamfests and hopefully come back with less than I went there with. I'll spend, the money I make selling these things, usually on things I need. Today I bought the Deluxe Quicksilver Coax crimping kit. The Deluxe one is for both Coax and Anderson power poles and other terminal ends, things like that. And I bought some really good Coax, about 100 feet of it, and some crimp ends for it. So it's time to get serious here. But I didn't sell everything I brought, but I did come back with less than I went there with, which is the goal, definitely. One of the things that I was thinking about is just talking to people about the technology they've collected, not necessarily at Hamfest, but at other events like that. But the unique thing about a Hamfest, especially the ones down around Long Island, which right now that's really the only one that's been going. but there's also one that happens in Queens at the Hall of Science periodically. Hopefully, they'll start those up again. And at the Sussex Ham Fest in New Jersey, and most recently at Nearfest in New Hampshire, you'll find a guy sitting at a table with a service monitor and a dummy load and a big power meter and a bunch of connectors and adapters, and he will test something that you might be interested in buying, or something on your table that you want to sell and you don't really know how well it works. And that is Andy, WA2CDL. And I tell you, I would love to have him join in on the net here sometime. I know he said he wants to come up and visit and see the house because we saw him today. But, it's something I was thinking about is what do we look at? What is he testing? What is he looking for? And, what good products have you picked up when you go to these events? Or what absolute donkeys have you picked up when you go to these events? It happens. So we've definitely all bought something that we took that gamble on. Somebody said, I think it works. And you go home and you basically bought, empty jar of Planters peanuts. All right. So that's what I was. My rig beeped, which means the repeater was probably beeping or about to. But my point here is that I was just thinking about heading in that direction. But if anybody has anything else, that's fine. I'm going to go for check-ins, but we're going to see real quick if Jim is there again. If not, we'll do check-ins anyway, and we'll come back around and check. So, Jim, K2BHM, have you joined us for the night here? All right, nothing heard. We'll check back on Jim in a little bit. But for now, let's take some check-ins. And as usual, to check in to the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net, you're going to give me your call sign, your name, and your location. Please come now.
This is W2RWS, Robin Pine Plains. Good evening. Control. Here is KB2 GGF Matt in Kerhonkson. Net Control. This is KD2 Tango Victor Sierra Lou in West Milford, New Jersey. Net Control. This is KD2VH, Jim in Poughkeepsie.
All right. So I've got Rob, W2RWS, Matt, KB2GGF, stumbling on my own words here tonight. Lou, KD2TVS, I believe. Correct me if I got that wrong. And Jim, KD2VAH. That's who we have tonight. Anybody else like to check in now?
This is Way2RKN. Jerry, I parked with a plate full of food, so I'm going to, quote, audit, unquote, back to net. This is November 2, Foxtrot, Zulu, Charlie.
Yeah, right. So we've got 6, and we'll Jim, if he does come, he can pop up. Has anybody heard from Jim on any of the nets? I didn't attend the last couple of days. Has he said any reason why he wasn't going to be around tonight, or is it just his normal dinner night? Okay, well, I hope everything's all right with him, and we'll check in with him later. Um, so, like I said, I'm kind of aimless tonight. I'm going to go through the list. Um, if you heard my introduction, I was just talking about Hamfests, collecting equipment, and testing it. Um, what are these guys doing when they test it? What are they looking for? So, they're very basic stuff, too. He's not doing anything really, really fancy. So let's start up at the top. And if you have something else you want to talk about, fine. Open mic tonight. Rob, W2RWS. Any comments tonight?
Hey, good evening. I've got a Heath kit. I've got 2, actually. One's a receiver, one's a transceiver. They're both kind of on the fritz. I'm not quite sure where to start. I know you suggested a book. I looked at it. And I'm thinking maybe the first thing I look at is the capacitors, the caps. They always say, oh, replace the caps. I see 1 or 2 that are leaking. I guess I'll have to figure out what size it is, what the markings are, and then order it somewhere, I guess. I'm wondering if there's any advice to troubleshooting. I do have the manual, the assembly manual, and that may make it a little easier. But I just thought I'd throw it out as a topic.
All right. And we've talked about this one before. And, this is an area where I'm still learning as well. I know from experience from some of the stuff that I've done basic repairs on, recapping a radio. I don't think you can go wrong with that. And if you're seeing some of them leaking, there's a good chance that most or all of the caps are out of spec. One of the things I've seen is that there's a number of places. eBay, always has sellers that are selling these kits, but I think you might find there are some specialty outlets on there on the internet that will sell a repair kit for a specific rig. So it'll come with all of the caps that they feel you should be changing, all in one package. I've done this for a couple of portable transistor radios that I have, and one tube portable where I bought a cap kit that just included every single one. And I think recapping the radio might be a decent step first. If you have those manuals, this is really helpful, and I'll tell you why. In almost any case like that, those manuals are going to have somewhere towards the end after the assembly, there will be voltage charts. And it basically tells you set this, set this, set this, put your probes here, and this is what you should be reading. And if you're not reading that, then usually the troubleshooting section will tell you, what could be wrong or what needs to be adjusted. But it's those test charts that you really need. And that's where you can start poking around in there and figuring out if you're getting the right voltages here and there. So definitely a good step. Cleaning contacts, wafer switches, variable resistors, anything that has contacts, get some deoxit and clean it up. And the obvious stuff, obviously, look at both top side, bottom side of the board for burn marks, broken traces, cracks, things like that. That's the most obvious stuff. But for solid state rigs, you want to test those voltages. I know for the tube rigs, you want to have a variac and bring them up to full operating voltage slowly, or else things can go incredibly wrong. So that's the basics, really. And there's some of these guys who work on this stuff constantly who know a lot more about it than I do, who could probably get you more into it. But that's where I would start at least. And we'll give some advice from my brother on car repair. He always says, start with the simple, easy, and inexpensive solutions. Always pick the things that are the easiest and least expensive to do first, because if you do them last and it ends up being one of those, you're always kicking yourself. But frequently it is the easiest and simplest solution. So, but hopefully that helps. Back to you, Rob.
No, that's great. Thanks. I didn't know about the troubleshooting in there. I've got to check it out. That's awesome. I have a meter, obviously, and love to get a couple of these puppies working. When I bought my tube amplifier out of the box, no one used for 20 years, the guy that had it was an amplifier expert and did bring it up to speed really slowly with a Variac to watch the tubes. So I thought that is good advice, and that's what he did with mine. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, my 5400 that I've been telling you about, yeah, Andy gave it a clear bill of health. I do have to get inside of it and get some deoxit out of the band switch, but other than that, he said that it's working great. It's putting out 100 watts on sidebands, putting out 100 watts on CW, and he said it appears to be working fine. Oh, and it was he tested it on receive also. It's as sensitive as it should be. He said it's a good sensitive radio. I just happen to have a lot of noise here, and because that particular rig has no noise filters at all, it's a it's a primitive rig, but it's interesting. We'll just put it that way. It is the last rig that Heathkit designed as a kit. And it's one of their few all solid state ones. So kind of neat. All right. Matt, KB2GGF, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, thank you for doing that first off, and good evening, everybody. I've been sort of laser focused on rearranging the shack and moving my computer in, and making some progress with that, but didn't really operate much today. And yes, I was wondering about Hamfest down on the island. I've never been to Hall of Science one, and they were always the talk of legend that there were really unusual things that would show up there. So it was worth it just to go look and see, even if you didn't get anything. Yeah, what do you check for when you're checking something else? Well, the obvious things that come to mind are shorts and grounds and continuity, voltages, physical inspection, see that the switches and knobs all function properly, and look for leakages and burns and like that, like you said, if you can get inside it. Often a good sniff. If it has like a burnt smell, make me wonder. But yeah, it's an interesting subject. How do you know if something is worth what they're asking, and what might be involved in getting it into good condition? So. Or the repeater will turn it back to net because I timed out. Back to net, KB2GGF.
That was your timeout, not the repeaters, but that's fine. Yeah, good stuff. I recently bought a radio off of eBay for parts, mostly because I wanted the microphone. It's another one of these Radio Shack 2-meter mobiles. And the guy even said that he had been using the radio for years, and it smoked, and that was the end of it. So, and yeah, there's definitely a burned part on the board. Looks like a large surface mount capacitor. It appears that it happened when a diode failed, and it was funny. I figured I would just try. He said it was dead. Well, it's more than dead. No, it's not undead. when I hook it up to the power supply and try to turn it on, the power supply simply beeps and shuts off. So that tells me dead short. And I took the meter out, and sure enough, dead short. So that's what I think happened there. Is I think one or more of the diodes failed and smoked a capacitor. I might actually be able to fix the thing, but like I said, I mostly bought it for the microphone, and it was cheap. So, but that kind of stuff happens, and that's what you're mentioning. A good thing if you're really unsure of a radio and you're getting that weird burnt smell out of it, and you know that something untowards may have happened to it. Put a meter right across the power leads, and yeah, if you get dead short there, yeah, don't even bother to plug it in unless you have a power supply with some good protection for that. So, the smell. I actually had to sell a radio for less than I wanted to today because the guy said it smelled like cigarettes. And I didn't really think about it. And when I picked the radio up, pulled my mask down and gave it a really good sniff in the speaker, because that's the part that'll probably from the front, absorb most of that. Yes, he was right. It did. And it wasn't from this household. It was a used radio someone picked up for me. But it was a little disappointing. And I agreed with him that, yes, that was a shame. But no, it wasn't our house that added the smoky smell. When he first told me it smelled like smoke, I figured he meant wood smoke because we had a nice roaring fire last night. But no, that's not what he was talking about. But yeah, there is a whole list of things they check for, though. One more drop. Hall of Science Amateur Radio Club Hamfests. Yes, they are unusual. They are a little smaller than the Limemark ones. They don't have a couple of like the big. We have less and less at Limemark now, but there are two vendors that sell new stuff. One who sells mostly accessories, and he's the guy I bought the crimping kit from and the Coax, and he has a lot of stuff like that. That's Quicksilver. And usually KJI is there from New Jersey selling brand new rigs and accessories and antennas and books, but he wasn't there today, and I thought he was supposed to be. So you won't find those guys at the Hall of Science one. You will find a collection of the strangest used stuff you have seen in a long time. And because of that, every now and then, some incredible bargains. So yeah, they haven't had it in a while. Hope they start them up again, but I do like going to that one. All right. I think it was Lou, KD2 TVS in West Milford. If you're still with us and you'd like to comment on tonight's topics or come up with a new one, come now.
Hey, good evening, everyone. And this is KD2 TVS, Lou. It was TVS, Tango Victor Sierra. Lou in West Milford, New Jersey. And yeah, I guess I'll continue on with the same topic. I haven't been exposed to any Hamfests. Actually became a tech last year with all this pandemic craziness, and it gave me something to do to study up, and something I guess I always was curious of as a kid, the ham radio, and never got around to doing it. So, and I got my general this year around the same time, May. So I only been to Hamfests and to see what the wares are. I remember the second one I did buy a bunch, so they needed some connectors and adapters that I needed there. Let me just reset. But yeah, at those Hamfests, I was enthused at actually how much old stuff. I mean, and the two that I went to were in Sussex County. One was one of the clubs that I'm a member of, the Sussex County Amateur Radio Club. They had their Hamfest during the summer, and I went to another one. It was up in Sussex County, New Jersey, also, but I don't remember their name. But yeah, you see these old antiques and stuff that I remember seeing as a kid, being curious, I guess, as a young teenager, opening it up, old vacuum tube TVs and stuff like that. And I remember my father having. I was born in '58, so I'll give you that. That way you know how old I am. 63. So playing with vacuum tubes and stuff like that. Grew up in Manhattan, so I didn't have any formal anybody to teach me anything, but was enthused by that. Let me reset again. And the drugstore on the corner had an old vacuum tube tester. And I remember we had one of the TVs at the house that wasn't working, and I don't know what made me want to open up the back, and I look, wait a minute, I've seen these at the drugstore when I've gone in there. Well, my parents have been in there, so I looked in there and said, it's not that difficult to figure out. I could at least test all the tubes and everything, so took to the tube tester and found the one, the old sweeping thing. It was either good or bad, so no science to that, and replaced the ones that were bad, and it worked. It's just, it's not too bad. But now I've been actually looking not for ham equipment, but I remember an old radio my dad had years ago, way back, I guess probably back in the 70s, that he had picked up or found in an old building somewhere, and it was an old AM radio wood cabinet with the little roll-up, kind of like there was a cover on it like a roll-up desk was, small. And the same thing, he found it wasn't working. I took the tubes out, checked them out, and got that working. So I guess for memory's sake, and remembering my father passed away several years ago, I guess if I could find one just like that, I'd probably pick it up at a ham fest and get it working just for old memories. But I'll be sitting here on the side and listening to you guys. It's my first time on this net. I'm always one for science and technology. I came from an aviation background and retired a little early last year. So I'm always on the techie stuff, computers, Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, and stuff like that. So I'm always curious. My ears perk up anytime I hear somebody talking techie stuff, science stuff. So thanks for letting me on, and I'll be looking forward to continuing on listening to you guys. So I'll be sitting here on the side. This is Lou, KD2TVS. Back to you, Ned.
And this is Neil, W2NDG, on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Lou, welcome to the group here. And I think you've said some magic words that perk our ears up. I know a bunch of us perked up when you said Raspberry Pi. I think you found a good place to hang out. We do a lot of tinkering and experimenting. A lot of us are into this stuff. On Thursday nights, there's a net at 8 p.m. on here run by Dave, K2JLV, where he talks about specific ham radio and related topics. And I know a number of nights we've gone in the direction of Raspberry Pis. I do the HRU, Ham Radio University Forum, in January every year on Raspberry Pi for ham radio. So that's one of my things. But welcome, and great stuff. I know another ham with a heavy aviation background from Eastern Long Island, from when we lived out there. And I may have actually met you at Sussex Hamfest, because I had a table in a very prominent location this year. So I was there selling stuff as well. But yes, once again, welcome. And at the end of the net, I will read off all the nets that are done on this repeater during the week. There are quite a few of them. It's a very active repeater because of where it is. It's, I think, almost 3,000 feet up in the air, up in the Catskills up here. And yeah, it does have pretty good range, as we can hear, since you're getting in from New Jersey. All right, Lou, thanks again. Jim, KD2VAH, you're up next.
I don't rightly have a subject, but you all keep talking about old radios and this and that, and my uncle, God rest him, he passed a while back, and he was the radio man on a ship during the Korea War. Actually, we went down there to visit. It was a battleship when my cousin come up. But anyway, long story short, my cousin ended up with all of his old ham equipment. She said, there's a garbage can full of tubes. She says, I just keep it in the shed. I don't know what else to do with it. And I said, well, send me pictures, mail me stuff. And she's like, just take the trip down here, say hello, and bring your truck. She said, you can take it all. You guys got me thinking, you know what, I'm a little bored anyway. Maybe I should take a trip down there, say hi, see some family, and come home with a truckload of ham equipment. Back to that.
It's not a horrible idea, and there are a number of us perfectly willing to give you a hand. Not because we want to skim anything, but it's educational. We love digging through this stuff. A lot of us really enjoy it. So, yeah, let me know more details about that. We've done this a few times. Not long after I moved up here, I assisted the club with retiring, equipment from a ham who had passed away. And it was a lead that I brought in because he was a friend of my brother's. And I had known that he had passed away, but I hadn't heard anything as far as, what they were doing with his stuff. And once again, not looking to skim things, that's not my goal. I like to make sure things end up in good hands. And sometimes that means in the hands of people who maybe recently got their licenses and need something, or kids who are learning. There's all sorts of great ways to use this stuff, or as fundraising for not-for-profit organizations. There's a lot of things that happen there that's good, and I got in touch with his widow and asked her about it, and basically prefaced it with, this is something that the organization I belong to does. And we can assist you, we can advise you, but not tell you what to do. And she was ecstatic, and we went in and basically took a lot of the stuff out and advised her on how to deal with it from a tax point of view. But you can't tell them values, and there's a lot of vague rules there, and something we've talked about on one of the meetings at one point. But assisting people who don't know what to do, and making sure that somebody doesn't come in and just lowball everything and then haul it right to a ham fest or put it right on eBay. That's not what we're looking for. But once again, educational, and you never know what's going to be in these piles of stuff. Like in the case of the radio that I was talking about at the beginning, it's an interesting radio because it was kind of a landmark for the company that made it, but not necessarily highly collectible. It's one of my favorite expressions I use when I'm shopping on eBay or other places is just because something's rare doesn't mean it's valuable. And most of you know what I'm talking about, but it's still a cool radio, and I'm glad that it's working well. So Jim, thanks. And once again, if you need some assistance, give us details, and I'm sure we'd be willing to give you a hand with it. Jerry, are you still auditing?
Yeah, I'm having a good time listening. Nothing really. So let's move along then. Back to that.
All right, that's fine. Which brings us down to Tom and to FCC, who I got to share some conversation and food with over the weekend. It was a pleasure to sit with you in person, Tom. But anything for us tonight?
Over wires, W2NDG in the group and 2F the CC. Let's see, Hamfest. So I'm checking out equipment. I remember one Hamfest in the 80s when ICOM 2ATs were still something desirable. somebody was selling a 2AT. So I said, oh, let me check it out. Turn it on, went on the local repeater, put out a call. Was answered by a guy on the other side of the ham fest who was buying an HT. So we said, I guess they both work because we could bring up the repeater. So I ended up buying the 2AT. Another talking about old equipment. A long time ago, or probably 1980 or something like that. It was at this park in Putnam County, and there was this old shack with just a bunch of junk in there, broken boards and stuff. And it was a Helicrafters receiver, and the old Helicrafters receiver. And the caretaker goes, "Take it. It's just nothing but junk in there." So I took it, and it powered up, but it really wasn't working. So in Cold Spring at the drugstore, they had one of those tube testers. So I think I needed 2 tubes. And the girl goes, well, I think there's tubes inside the tube tester. So she opens it up, and the two tubes I needed were there. And I got them for like dirt cheap because I think they had the original price on them. So I got, replaced 2 tubes and got this old Helicrafters receiver that I got for free working. Shortwave receiver. So that was cool. So it's N2FCC back to that.
That's neat. Tube testers in drugstores. Yes. And I'm old enough to remember that. So what has spiritually replaced the tube tester in the drugstore? Probably the Dr. Scholl's insole tester, that thing you stand on. It tells you which insoles you need. I don't know. There's, it's just amazing to us that, that was early 70s. They were still there. And we had a couple of tube TVs in the house, and my brothers were always collecting them from, the ends of driveways. People had dead TVs, and they would grab a TV and they would take the tubes to the drugstore and run them through the tester and go into their stock of tubes that they had salvaged from other TVs. And they'd get one of these TVs up and running. And that was really the only way we could have a TV in our downstairs, family room, was whatever my brothers managed to fix, because Dad wouldn't buy one. He had some little one in his room, and in my parents' bedroom, and then there was another small one that we had. But yeah, he wasn't really big on TV until he got older. Anyway, cool stuff. And people have given me radios over the years. I had one when I was packing the car last night before we went down to this ham fest. I kept staring at it and saying, should I get rid of this? Should I get rid of it? It's something that somebody had on their table, and they were like, here, take this. It's $2 or $5. I didn't pay more than $5 for it, but it's a Helicrafters S120. And it's one of these radios that I don't know how many of these things I've owned over the years, because there's a lot of them out there. People are always trying to give them away. It's just a very, very basic slide rule tuning multi-band Helicrafter. It's a very simple radio. This one needs to be completely restrung, but when I manually turned the tuning capacitor, it receives. And so if I restring the whole thing, it'll probably work. But I was just going to, put it on my table as is, $5. But, I may fix one this time. I'll fix it up, maybe even repaint the cabinet and make one look pretty. So cool stuff. Let me drop. This is Neil, W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Shout out to Jim, K2BHM. Jim, are you out there?
I'm here. Went up to Albany today, and we're back a little bit later than I expected. So I've been here for, probably about the last 20 minutes or so. K2BHM. What's the topic tonight?
Well, I didn't have a specific one. And I was talking about my trip to the Hamfest today. So I was talking about buying used radios, testing them, what my friend Andy, who runs the Fix-It counter at a lot of these Hamfests, what he tests for, what he's looking for. Rob was asking for more advice on the old Heathkit rig that he bought, and how to go through it, and we touched on that a bit. We were talking about variacs, bringing up the tube rigs very slowly, and just about the old equipment in general and any experiences. Jim related to us that he may have a bunch of old ham equipment to recover for somebody. Which is interesting. As you know, we always love those living museums. So anyway, that's where we are. We've just been talking about used equipment at the ham fests.
Yeah, okay. Well, I started going to ham fests back late 70s. This one particular one was our favorite, the one in Deerfield, New Hampshire. It was Haas Traders, and now it's Nearfest. We've been going to that for about 40 years, so I couldn't even begin to talk about all the equipment that I've bought over the years and gave away to somebody or sold or whatever. You never know what you're going to get in. I wound up buying not just radios, but a power feed for my Bridgeport milling machine. I bought a power supply that is a dual split tracking supply that runs off the old GPIB bus, and one side of it was dead, so I got it for $5, and checked one side against the other, found a couple bad transistors, and replaced them out without a schematic or anything, and got it up and running, and come to find out it's a $1,000 supply. So lots of things over the years, and they seem to come in growths. All of a sudden you find a bunch of temperature controllers, panel mount industrial temperature controllers, and you see a bunch of them at like 6 different ham fests in a row, and then all of a sudden you don't see them anymore. And then we would find like APC UPSs, battery in it but dead, and other than that, pretty much intact. And we were buying them for $10, and that 12 volt 7 ampere hour alarm battery that you buy for $20, you pick up one of them, throw it in, you got a good UPS, and they're all over the house keeping my Raspberry Pis up and my front end up for the internet and so forth and so on. So yeah, lots of different things, and half the fun of it is fixing it without getting the manual on it. So that was a lot of good experience. Probably launched my career quite a bit further by taking on challenges like that. So anyhow, is that what you were looking for? Back to you, Neil. K2VHM.
Yeah, we're very casual tonight. I said I wanted to keep it short anyway. After the long weekend, as I said, just a little tired, and but it was neat going down there today. I know. I think you mentioned before that you've kind of been disappointed in the way some of the ham fests have changed over the years, and yes, a lot of them have shrunken, and they don't have a lot of what they used to. But yeah, I have a bunch of friends that still go up to Deerfield, and they love it. And my friend Andy, who we were talking about, runs the fix-it and testing table up there now, like he does at some of the other ham fests. So he loves doing that. He has this little plaque that he sets up, and all of his equipment, and he's kind of a known quantity at these things. But what I mentioned at the beginning was he tested that Heathkit rig that I picked up recently for me. I did try to sell it today, but nobody wanted it. So I brought it over to Andy and I said, tell me how well this works. And actually, he said it works very well. He tested a lot of aspects of it. So that's something I was touching on, is also, what are they looking for when they do this? What are these guys doing? He's doing very basic stuff. But let me drop. He's checking to see if it's on frequency, receiving and transmitting. He's checking its receive sensitivity by hooking it directly up to his service monitor and putting very, 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 very low level signals, because you're hooked directly to a machine. You're going through various limiters and attenuators, but you're putting out, microwatts at that point. So he tested for sensitivity. He flips thing around and he tests power output to see how much power the thing is actually putting out. And he also will go so far as to look at the sideband picture, the envelope, and whether or not you're splashing outside of your envelope or things are nice and tight. But yeah, I got a very good report of health on this thing. So cool, Jim. And welcome. And let's see if there's anybody else out there who wants to check in real quick. And if not, we'll probably do a speed round here.
N3UIQ.
KB2RWW, Bob. Oh, just checking in.
You're right. So Paul and Bob just checking in. Good evening, Bob. Thank you for checking in. Paul, any good Hamfest or used equipment stories?
You guys talking Hamfest stuff. Let's see. I started out in Harrisburg at the Firecracker Hamfest, and we went down to Timonium. I've been up to Deerfield. What else have I been to? Oh, I don't know. Been to so many of those things. Yeah, they're not like they used to be. You go to the ones around here, it's like they like, where's all the goodies at? Other than that, I got my Nano VNA today, so I'm playing with that. N3UIQ.
Oh, cool. That's a fun toy. Yeah, I mean they've shrunken a bit. Sussex is still fun. I like that one. I haven't been to Timonium. I've been to the computer shows they used to do there, but that's something that faded into obscurity is the old Market Pro computer shows. You'd go and spend 2 hours walking the floor. You buy a case, buy a motherboard, buy a hard drive, buy a video card, buy a power supply, all the trimmings, and go home and try to get it all to work. Those were fun days. I do kind of miss doing that too. I know you can still do it, but it was just neat to go look at it and shop for it that way. Anyway, all right, back up to the top. We can do a speed round here real quick. So let me start with Jim because he was usually first in the check-ins. So K2BHM, anything else further on all this stuff?
Yeah, okay, K2BHM. Yeah, I did notice a degradation of quantity and quality of goodies at the Hamfest over the years. Back 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there were lots of little electronic companies up around the Deerfield area, and they would go through and clean out their back rooms and stuff like that, and they would come with boxes full of brand new resistors, capacitors, transistors, chips, switches, all kinds of stuff like that. And you'd buy a whole box for $2-3 and come home and stock up your junk box and then go off and start building stuff with it and so forth. Lots of little industrial trinkets and stuff like that. And then somewhere around the time that eBay started coming out, that stuff started drying up. And more recently, it's been pretty dry. But luckily, I've got stuff that's sitting around that doesn't go bad. And every so often you need something, you go back there into one of the boxes and pull a rabbit out of your hat and fix something. So that's where a lot of my inventory comes from. And it's satisfying now to go out and pull something out and fix something for somebody, and good, there's one less thing in the garage now. But yeah, it's been an interesting trip going to different flea markets and stuff like that over the years. So many different things pop up. And interestingly enough, a lot of the stuff is, if it's not working out of the box, it's a simple fix. Like I say, a bad tube or a bad filter cap or something like that, and put it in and you're good to go. So, worth the effort. Anyhow, back to you, K2BHM.
Well, thanks, Jim. And one of the cool things about the local ham fests, and maybe the next one I fire off to if you want to tag along, is Dave Schneider. He, I believe, resides right here in the Hudson Valley. And he's the connector guy, although he has so much more than that. And he sets up a huge, rectangle of tables. And he and his son, and they sell every connector and adapter cable and just all kinds of neat stuff. I bought a couple of adapters from him today, some oddball ones that I never have enough of, and some interesting adapter cables. And he gets like surplus stuff that he'll find. Today's find was 1/4-inch headphone jacks to 2 alligator clip leads, which was kind of cool, and actually had a very specific use case that I ran into a couple nights ago and ended up using it again today, because when I brought that Heath kit up to Andy to check one thing about that radio, and the guy who was sitting with us said there's a general complaint he had with most Heath kit radios is that there's no speaker in them. You have to hook one up. Let me drop. But yeah, Dave's stuff is great. You can just browse through it forever. I've bought some really cool speakers for projects from him and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, today I bought solder, those 1/4-inch adapters, some antenna adapters, and a couple other audio adapters from him. So always has neat stuff. And there is frequently another guy who has similar stuff. And if Quicksilver's there, then yeah, his table is always also very interesting. So cool. All right. Let's fly through the rest of the list here. Rob, W2RWS, anything else?
No, thanks. I did find online that a place to as a kit, but my 2 radios aren't listed there, oddly enough, and I'm checking on eBay now. But no, thanks. It's a long-term project. When I had some time, cold winter night, take it all apart and see what's what. So I thought I'd ask. Thanks.
All right, Rob. And I know this is a little off the beaten path for you, and it's not necessarily the same type of thing, but there is a show that occurs, and it's more of like a tailgating event. There's anywhere from 5 to 15 vendors at this thing. But it is the Antique Radio Swap Meet at the Seaford train station on Long Island. It's in the parking lot of the Seaford train station. It starts at sunrise on the first Sunday of the month. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter whether it's a holiday. You'll find people there on crazy days. Easter Sunday, there's still people there. But yeah, the first Sunday of the month at sunrise at the Seaford train station, Seaford, Long Island. And one of the reasons why I'm recommending it is because the Antique Radio Society that a lot of these guys belong to, they restore old, AM and AM FM tube radios. There's a guy there, a couple of guys who are always selling caps that are direct replacement for the larger vintage ones. And they know a lot about this stuff, and you can pick their brains, and they have a lot of other parts that might be worthwhile to you. So, here's one. Let me drop. I got one coming in on the chat here. KB2RWW, Bob. And thank you, Bob. Excellent mention. And I know Jim knows about this too. The MIT flea. Right outside of Boston, MIT has a monthly flea market during the good weather. I know they were having trouble getting it going again after COVID. I'm not sure what the status of it is, but I know once they get past that, it'll be up again. And there can be some really crazy stuff. Bob's exact comment here is he likes going to the MIT flea. You never know what you find there from the students looking to get rid of their projects. Yeah. And I have never been. I've only heard, and I do want to go. So plan a pilgrimage there. But yeah, there's some ideas for you there, Rob. Jim, any quick comments on that? Have you been to MIT?
Oh God, years ago. It had to be 30 years ago. It's just such a long drive from when I was living up in Albany. And friends of mine would go and they would complain that you'd spend all the time driving there. And then 12 o'clock noontime, everybody's packing up and leaving. So it only runs from like maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock till noon, and then everybody's leaving. So I don't know if it's still like that or whatever. I think it was called Framingham. Does that sound familiar?
Well, it was right by MIT in Cambridge, I believe. Right across the river from Boston. But if it's one of those quick ones, Seaford, they're packing up and out of there by 10 o'clock, sometimes even earlier. It's a very quick event. But what we always used to do is we'd go there, during the warmer months, hit that, and then like 10 minutes up the road is a real junky flea market in Belmore. And it's a junk market, but God, you never know what you're going to find there. I have found crazy stuff there. Radios, other electronics, the cash drawer we use for Jill's business. It's like a cash register drawer, and they're not cheap. I think I bought it for like $15 there. There's always good stuff there. But anyway, yeah. I would never go all the way out there just to go to the MIT flea. I think I would plan it around something else. But anyway, yep. Matt, KB2GGF, any comments on the last round here?
Not too much. I've been copying the mail and doing a little research, trying to figure out what the heck the USB connectors on the edge of this monitor I've got are for. And best I can figure is they must be for plugging in a keyboard and mouse, because they don't make any voltage. But enjoyed the net and nothing further to add. So back to net, KB2GGF.
Well, I can probably solve that mystery. So there's USB connectors on the monitor?
Yeah, it's a Dell 17-inch. Yes, they're on the edge toward the bottom on the left-hand side.
There will be the other end of that. I forget what they call the B connector, probably on the bottom near where the video connectors are. And if it's one of those, it basically is it's a hub. So if you get one of those A to B cables and plug it into your computer, those jacks will light up.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I haven't got it hooked up yet. So, yeah, I was sort of wondering that if they would come to life once it's all cabled.
I have to tell you, they're notoriously not great, at least the older ones. I know my monitor I have on my desk at work, I had hooked up where I had the ports live, and at one point with one of the computers, I would sit there and I would get the noise. You guys all know what I'm talking about, that USB noise. I'd sit there and you get disconnect, reconnect. And then a minute later, disconnect, reconnect. Disconnect, reconnect, disconnect, reconnect. It took me a while to figure out what was doing it. Once I figured out what it was, I unplugged that cable and I didn't plug it back in. But yeah, I've had a couple of them do stuff like that, or they're not capable of running anything beyond like a thumb drive. But very handy though for things like thumb drives. I used to have one that had the 2 USB ports on the side, and then it also had all the memory card slots as well. So anyway, all right, Matt. Lou, KD2 TVS, any closing remarks for us?
Yeah, Neil, this is KD2TVS Lou. It's been a pleasure listening to you guys actually tonight with all this talk about old radios and stuff, bringing back a lot of old memories as a kid. You mentioned about your brothers and doing the same thing, playing with the vacuum tubes and TVs, and brings back good memories. And then I was when all the Heath Kid talk that was going around, I was just remembered that my cousin, when we were teenagers in the city, I remember he had graduated from high school probably about 3 years. So I was a teenager, about 3 years or he was 3 years older than I was. He graduated from high school called Samuel Gompers in the Bronx, and he went on to I guess they did electrical training at that particular high school. I went to aviation, which was out in Queens, Long Island. So, and I was remembering, I guess he was enthused by electronics too, and started building Heath kits. Then I remembered when you guys talking about kits that he built an oscilloscope, and I can't remember, he built a couple other things. And let me just break a second. And then it reminded me, you were talking with the first gentleman about the two Etherkit radios, the transceiver, and we did the receiver and transmitter that were Etherkits that he had picked up, and those manuals. And I remember my cousin let me know, I remember something I was playing with to try to fix electronically, and it was a company that you could actually, I guess we weren't going online back then, but somehow I remember getting a schematic, and it would, I guess you could order away schematics for specific units that you wanted to repair. I remember it would come in this little envelope, and you just open them all up, and they had the full schematics to whatever you wanted to troubleshoot and work on. But I can't remember. For some reason, I remember yellow and white coloring on something like that. But it was an old company. But I got to look that up, see if they're still around. So that's pretty much it, Neil. So I appreciate sitting actually in with you guys tonight, and I'll definitely be back. And I think I got all the info for the different nets, because I go on the Undernet on Tuesday nights, and I have I think I was just on Thursday night with Dave. So I am listening to a few, but I'll sit by and make sure I got all the nets on the 805. So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure talking to all you guys on the net, and stay safe, and we'll talk next week. WKD2TVS, Lou in West Milford, New Jersey.
Comment, WA2RKN.
I knew somebody was going to comment. Jerry, if I hadn't heard anything, I was actually going to throw it out to the group. I figured between you and Jim, you'd be fighting over answering Lou's question. Go ahead, Jerry. Tell Lou what it is.
I'm surprised Jim hasn't tried to get in. Yeah, it's Sam's PhotoFax. Yeah, great stuff. If you could get them for the model you want to work on.
Jim, you have a comment?
They actually branched out eventually too and started doing computer monitors and stuff like that too near the end. And I haven't seen them around in years. They used to have a little book, and you could go through and look up an RCA chassis number or Philco, whatever, go by the brand and the model number or whatever, and it would tell you what photo fact to get. And they were like, I don't know, I think they were like $7.95 or $6.95 or whatever, and it would have like 2 TVs in it and 3 radios and maybe one other thing or whatever, and you would buy the envelope just to get the service manual on the one particular device that you were looking to fix. And yeah, brought back a lot of memories. Probably at the end I'll say a little bit about my dad and the TV fixing.
No, thanks, Jim. And yes, Sam's PhotoFax, still in business. You can go to their website, and they've kind of kept up with the times. You can get electronic copies of the schematics and some of the manuals that they have, but definitely at least the schematics. For those of you who are into old radio repair and basically learning about the old radios, there is another invaluable resource that I almost forgot to mention, and that is radiomuseum.org. Radiomuseum.org. It's you can get quite a bit of information out of it for free, but if you pay to join, you get a lot of information, and any of the radios that they have schematics for, if you're a member, you can download a full-size schematic. I have it's a fantastic resource. So radiomuseum.org. Anyway, great stuff. Lou, thanks again, and I'm sure we'll hear you again. Cool. Jim, KD2VAH. So where is this pilgrimage you need to make?
Port St. Lucie in Florida.
Ooh.
And believe me, y'all really got me wondering. I'm going to give my cousin a call tomorrow. Hell, I can give her a call 5:30 tomorrow morning because she'll be up. She's one of those type. But anyway, and I'd like to see my aunt down there. Probably not going to see her many more times after this. But anyway, end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, I was at computer shows. Spending money, a lot of money. I've never been to a ham fest is what I'm getting at. I can't even imagine because I remember going crazy. I mean, I'd go to a computer show, be there 6-7 hours, and come home with all kinds of parts and stuff I needed back when, hard drives were going, for $1 a meg. You got a 100 megabyte drive and that's what it cost you. But I can't even imagine a ham fest. It must be like a toy store.
They're fun, but like Jim was saying, they're not what they used to be. I'm trying to think. I mean, unless you're going to go to a warm place, which you're saying for Florida, but the good ones are pretty much done until spring. Jim, and I both mentioned Near Fest in Deerfield, New Hampshire. I haven't been yet because there's always something else going on the same weekend for me. But I would recommend maybe making a pilgrimage up to that one. And another invaluable resource for you old radio guys. And once again, it's not specifically for ham radio, but there is a lot of really useful stuff at this show. Twice a year in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, at the Renninger's Antique Mall. Under the pavilions, the local antique radio club there does this huge antique radio show, Kutztown Antique Radio, and it's twice a year in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, and that is worth a visit. I've done a table there twice and sold a lot of stuff, but it's also a place where you're going to find those capacitors and dial cord string and all kinds of stuff that you need, even paint, to restore radios. And you'll just find a lot of really cool radios. That is the show that I bought my Nordmenda Globe Traveler at. Always wanted a nice working one. And I have one. So, all right, Jim, keep us posted. Jerry, thank you for the Sam's photo fact mention. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Neil. K2BHM. Yeah, I got an early start. I was probably 6-7 years old, something like that. And Dad used to do TV repair work in your house. And so I think it was a Hickok, a commercial version, much more sophisticated than the ones you have in the drugstore. The one in the drugstore just made sure the filament was okay and it put out something. And this one would actually measure the mutual conductance of the tube and check for leakage and shorts and a whole bunch of other stuff. So Dad would take the back off the set, and I would go and pull one tube out at a time and set up the tube checker and check it. And if it was a little weak, I would take a grease pencil and circle the top of the tube. It'll indicate that it's weak and make a list of them. And meantime, Dad would be taking the chassis out and Windexing the front of the picture tube and the front and back of the glass leaded screen, and taking apart the high voltage cage and taking all the dust out of that. Back then, the high voltage areas would suck in dust like a magnet. And he'd get the vacuum cleaner out and paintbrush and take all the stuff out. And we had the tube caddy, and there'd generally be 2 or 3 tubes that we would pop in, and the set was back up and running and good as new. And he charged $5 for the service call to your house. So, good old days. Let me drop a second. So that kind of started my career in fixing things, helping Dad out and getting into the nitty-gritty of stuff. Probably the worst one he ever did was my uncle. Decided he was going to fix his TV himself, an old black and white. And he took all the tubes out and took them to the drugstore and checked them and found a couple bad ones and whatever, and came back and plugged all the tubes back in again. But he went under the theory that as long as the tube fit into the socket, it was the right tube for the job. He didn't make any note of which one went where or whatever. And then he also noticed something too. There was these little metal cans. We would call them IF cans. And they had all these screws sticking out the top, and all the screws were loose. So he went and tightened up all the screws. And somehow that set didn't work. So Dad got into it, got things straightened out, managed to borrow a sweep generator and a scope and so forth to realign the FM or the IF strips, and got the TV back up and running. And that was quite a task. But anyhow, that's the way he was. You put something in front of him impossible, and he had to go and do it and show you that it was not impossible, it could be done. So anyhow, that was my background and my growing up. So back to you, Neil, K2BHM.
Well, thanks, Jim. You reminded me of something from when I was a kid. There was a woman in Woodstock who came and stayed with us a few times when my parents went away for more than a couple of days, and didn't want to burden anybody else with us. So she would come in and she'd stay in the house and cook for us and clean. And she was a gourmet chef, which was really interesting. I learned a lot from her there. But she only listened to the news, and she had this AM radio, and I know exactly the model at this point. It was a Zenith pillow speaker radio, a transistor radio that was inside of a hard shell plastic case. It was part of the hard shell. You couldn't take it out. And basically what you did was you tuned it to the station you wanted, set the volume, and the whole radio went under your pillow. And once you closed it, it was locked on the station, locked to the volume level. And I believe it had like a mechanical timer. So you could set like a sleep timer, set it to shut off after an hour. And she said that it wasn't working right one day. And her husband, who was anything but an engineer, took it and said, well, let me take a look at it. And he handed it back to her and he said, I opened it up and I think I know what was wrong with it, but it didn't seem to help. And he said, I might have actually made it worse, but I found all these screws inside that were loose, so I tightened them all. Jim?
Yes. Same thing. Alignment, sweep generator, and scope to the rescue.
Yes, I think she brought it into Kingston to like Jones TV or one of the old places that was there then, and had them fix it. But years later, she's not with us anymore. She's a very interesting lady, but years later, I acquired one of those Zeniths, neat radio. So anyway, all right, Jerry, if you're still with us, any closing remarks?
Nothing really further to add. Enjoyed the conversation this evening, and Yeah, Lou, make sure you check in again next time. WA2RTN, back to that.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Tom, N2FCC. Any closing remarks tonight?
N2FCC, no, just a little bit of reminiscing, but no closing remarks. N2FCC, back to that.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. And yeah, I enjoyed tonight. It was a lot of fun. Paul, N3EYQ, end of the night. What's on your mind?
Just copying the mail. Yeah, right, copying the mail. CV your talk, right? I actually went to that was a train show. That was a train show in Pennsylvania at a firehouse. I've been to train shows, Hamfest. I don't know, I've been to Ham for 30 years now, 35 years, so I think it's a Timonium. That was a great one. Oh my God. I can remember going down there and coming home with all kinds of goodies. But I've been to Sussex only once, so that was not a bad Hamfest. At least in the modern realm of things. I like to go to Hamfest and look for little things like I need case screws for things. My MFJ analyzer. I lost all the screws because you got to take all the screws apart to change the battery. Like, all right, so now where are all the screws? Disappeared. Or don't feel like putting them back in, and here they are. Things like that. And some places got it, some places don't. I don't know. It's really hard to say. You know, and what's really good is if you can get a Hamfest with somebody actually, some of the actual vendors coming out. You know, like KJI used to come out all the time and here and there. It's just like, yeah, it's the same old people sometimes, and I don't know. I don't know what to say anymore about that. N3EYQ. There was something else I had in mind, but I got crap. Can't remember the darn thing. N3EYQ.
That's all right. Yeah, I've certainly had my Hamfest adventures. Oh, hold on. Sorry about that. All right. Yeah, I know about the Timonium one. Something we do get down there once in a while, so maybe I'll check that one out someday. I mean, as a kid, I remember there was one in Kingston, more of an auction, but it was the old OMARC club having an auction when I was a kid and went to one. And then I think in my 20s, I went to Mount Beacon Hamfest when it was at the Arlington High School, and it was huge. Definitely not what it used to be, but that one still happens. And none of them are as big as they used to be. I mean, when I first started doing the Limark one, it was much bigger than it is now. But the outdoor one they did this year was pretty good. It was good size, and there was a lot of neat stuff there. So, well, they're still out there, and we still like to go, and we still enjoy it. But I think that's it for me tonight. Do we have any last-minute check-ins? Anybody wants to pop in and say hi real quick?
Actually, I still got software for that. Our OMARC auction. It's there somewhere.
KD2SQO, been listening the whole time and didn't check in just because I don't have anything to present per se. Thank you.
Oh, that's all right. And you're always welcome. Cool. Yeah, Paul, maybe you know where my Mosley CM1 ended up. That's where I never should have gotten rid of that thing and brought it to one of those auctions and got rid of it. But I do miss it. Jim, closing comments?
Yeah, and besides that, K2BHM for ID. One other thought, something to be careful of when working with vacuum tube equipment. My dad found out about it the hard way. He went to fix a Zenith black and white TV one time, and the picture was rolling vertically, and you couldn't adjust it. And so we checked the tubes, and I think it was like a 6AU6 or something like that was the vertical oscillator. And it checked bad, and so he went and got one out of the tube caddy, and he would always check the tube out of the tube caddy before he put it in the set, and it checked good, put it in, and the thing still rolled. And must be a bad tube, even though it checked good. He went through 3 tubes out of the tube caddy, and all 3 of them checked good, but the set still rolled. And so, I got to take this back on the bench. So he took it back on the bench, and he's checking everything out, got the Sam's photo fact, and nothing made any sense. He's checking the tube checker out. Maybe the tube checker is bad. It's checking a good tube bad, or a bad tube good, or whatever. No, it's nothing. So he brought the TV over to a friend of his who taught electronics, taught Dad electronics at was Veterans Vocational School then before Hudson Valley. And he was working on it for, months. And he happened to bump into a Zenith representative at one of the electronics stores. He dropped. So he's talking to the Zenith rep about this, and the Zenith rep gets a little smile on his face, a little chuckle, and says, "You didn't use a Zenith tube." What? Well, it turns out that, I forget the exact pin numbers, but like the cathode on an RCA or a Zenith or RCA or Philco or whatever, the cathode comes to both pin 3 and 5. But if you have a Zenith tube, it only comes to pin 3. Pin 5 is no connection. So on the tube socket, they use that pin 5 connection as a tie point for something else in the circuit, knowing that if you put in a Zenith tube, there was no connection inside, and everything would work. But if you put in an RCA tube, it would take some other particular point and now short it over to the cathode at the tube and throw the circuit way off kilter and not work. So he took a tube, cut pin 5 off of it, plugged it in, and the set worked fine. So if you run into problems trying to bring up an old tube set, check and make sure that there's not a difference between the manufacturer's tube and the generic tube. It might save you some time. So anyhow, they even had a sense of humor back then. Back to you, Neil, K2BHM.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Yeah. It was, whether it was, I don't know if it was before or after you came on, but I was quoting my brother, who was always saying, always start with the simple, easy, and inexpensive when you're doing anything. Because you'll kick yourself if you do it backwards. All right. Let me drop and see if there's anybody else who needs to say anything. And if not, we're going to close things up here. All right. You have been listening to the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net with Neil W2NDG and Jim K2BHM. This net occurs every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on the repeater of the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club, or OMARC, 146.805 with a negative shift and a PL tone of 103.5. You do not need to be a member of OMARC to participate in this net or any of the other nets that occur on this repeater. However, we do invite you to take a look at the club at omarcclub.org, omarcclub.org, and we encourage you to maybe become a member. We do have a lot of good activities going on, and a lot of them are online and virtual and on the repeater. So please join us. Also, please join us for the 4 other nets that occur on this repeater every morning at 8:35 a.m. a rotating cast of characters, including yours truly on Fridays, hosts the 835 on the 805. A roundtable net, not a directed net, started at the beginning of the COVID pandemic to make sure that we were all okay and we were socializing and everybody was getting what they needed. And it was a great place to share a lot of really good information. Every night at 6:30 p.m. is the 6:30 check-in net. Very similar to the 835 net, but done in a directed fashion by a net control. Once again, a rotating cast of OMARC characters. The 6:30 net usually runs half an hour or so and fits in with your evening schedule well, and just a bunch of friendly people talking about what they did during the day or whether they need help with anything. Every currently Tuesday night at 8 p.m. is the Undernet, the Ulster and Northern Duchess Readiness Net. This is a net getting our people ready for the eventuality of joining one of the amateur emergency communications organizations. There are a couple of them, but that is a situation and a part of amateur radio that is currently in a state of flux. However, rather than just sit out and do nothing, we're going to be a part of it in our own way. So really neat stuff. The guys have been passing around pictures over slow scan television through handheld radios and demonstrating that this is something that'll work when everything else goes to heck and nothing's working. Every Thursday night at 8 p.m., Dave K2JLV hosts the Thursday night Thursday night Tech Net, which is more of a ham radio oriented net than this net. Dave usually polls his check-ins for a subject or a problem or a troubleshooting issue that somebody wants to talk about. If no topic develops in the first round, Dave spins the topic wheel and comes up with one for us. Always a good conversation, always good stuff going on there. And once again, this has been the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net on the Overlook Mountain 805 repeater. And we are going to return the repeater to its regular operation. As usual, I will leave the radio on for a little while, and I'll be shuffling around here trying to get ready for my day tomorrow if anybody wants to bring anything up. But everybody have a good night. We'll catch you all next weekend. 7-3, ending the YouTube stream now. Have a good night.